Hello there guys, welcome back to F1 content on my channel. As you can see, we are here in F1 2017, ready to start our career mode, and hopefully we can have a little bit more motivation this time around to finish it, because in F1 2016 I started it, and then about halfway through the first season I kind of lost motivation because of the fact the game was getting a little bit too easy to develop the car, and also I was just running out of time to actually just get out there and crank the videos out. So I'm hoping that we don't run into this issue this time around, but let's get on with what team we're going to be selecting for this season. As you can see, we've got a number of teams we could pick, but the team I decided to pick, if you haven't seen the promo video that I put out last week, we're going to be picking the Sauber F1 team, primarily because they're not getting much love on the F1 community that I'm following. There's a lot of other career modes out there for teams like Renault, Toro Rosso, Williams, Force India, Tom 97 is doing, and TMR UK is doing the McLaren Honda career mode. So there's also Haas on there, but I think I've seen a couple of other guys that are possibly going to be doing that team. I also considered doing a top team as well, because that might be a little bit different, and it may be a little bit easier on my end to actually crack them out, because it's going to be a little bit of a shorter career mode because of the fact that we're going to be fighting for the championship a little bit sooner. But I picked the Sauber team because, yes, they're not the most popular team on the block, but I thought, let's give ourselves a little bit of a challenge. Let's get into this, and we're also going to pick Pascal Wehrlein as our teammate. And in terms of rules, the difficulty setting is going to be on expert for now, but I like the fact that there's an adaptive difficulty setting where it's not suddenly, oh, it's going to be master, oh, it's going to be expert, oh, it's going to be legendary. It's a slider difficulty, so depending on how well we're doing, we'll just gradually increase the slider up or the slider down. But without further ado, let's get into this. The rules in terms of what the race settings are going to be is going to be full qualifying and a 50% race. So without further ado, let us begin.
Yes, and I respect that. But my client has a championship to contest. So if you want our participation, I'm afraid the concessions are mandatory. Yes, that's fine. Get back to me when you can. Goodbye. No one ever just signs the contract. Anyway, thanks for coming by on such short notice. I just needed to cover a couple of quick things with you before you race. Firstly, as requested, here's a copy of your contract. It's a rolling deal. However, the team reserves right of termination if you fail to meet performance standards. You're second driver for now, but work hard, hit your targets, and I'll be able to sweeten the deal. I'm also looking to get you into some invitational events throughout the season. The experience and exposure from these will be great for your image. Plus, you'll get to drive some nice historic cars. Now then, go get ready for the next session. And good luck.
Thank you, Emma. So that is the initial cutscene that we've got with our contract person, and that is actually the same person that dealt with your contracts in F1 2016 for those of you who didn't play the game. And as you can see, this is the contract we've been offered. I think it's second driver we've been given, but that can be subject to change depending on how well we do. I mean, in the last career mode, we were able to move up to first driver relatively quickly, but we have to wait and see if we can do that this time around. Got a little bit of a different viewpoint compared to what we had in F1 2016. We're on the outside of the hospitality area rather than on the inside. And this is the new laptop. The first screen looks very similar to what we had last year's game, but we've got a new tab that we've got to worry about here, and that is vehicle management. As you can see, we've got a bunch of engine components to manage, as well as a gearbox if we switch across. Yeah, there you go. And there's also, here's the tile allocation that we had, but we're going to cut straight back to the vehicle management and just quickly explain what the situation is. So you've got a limited number of components that you've got to manage throughout the season, and your aim is to try and manage those parts throughout the year, and you can change them, chop and change them out as the practice sessions and qualifying sessions go. But if you overuse them, you are susceptible to engine failures, and therefore you may have to then pick up penalties. So we've got to use 4 components of each of these bits here of the engine, and the gearbox, they have to last 6 races. So if you take a gearbox make a gearbox change at any point during that 6 race stint, you end up taking a 5 place grid penalty, and then you also take a penalty if you take extra component parts from the engine side of things. But yeah, that's to show you the gearbox side of things. But without further ado, that's enough of me talking about some of this stuff. Let's get into the first practice session.
Welcome to our viewers from around the globe. You join us just as today's practice session for the Australian Grand Prix is about to start. Beside me to take you through free practice today is a man with 3 decades of racing experience under his belt. It is, of course, Anthony Davidson. Thanks for joining us today, Anton. Tell me, where should we be focusing our attention today?
I think we need to be looking across the entire field to see how far these cars are able to push a single set of tyres. While everyone will be trying different setups and running with different fuel loads, if you're attentive enough, you can definitely pick out trends for each type of tyre compound, which will give us a rough idea of how long the drivers are able to stay out there during a stint in the race.
Alright, we're coming around the final corner to start our first lap in the F1 2017 career mode. We're beginning with the track acclimatization, which was one of the practice programs in the previous game. It's a very simple thing. You just got to go through all the gates in the appropriate spots around the circuit, and depending on how well you do, you get a certain number of points. And we're now going to cut away to the end of the lap, and as you can see, we managed to ace the secondary objective that you get. So we got the maximum possible amount of resource points out of that on the first lap, which was fantastic. So we're going to cut away now. We then moved on into the tyre wear test, which was again another one of those programs that was in the previous game, but you've only got 3 laps to worry about rather than 5 or 6, which was a little bit more stressful, especially when you had cars behind us, like what we've got right now with I think it's Lance Stroll that was giving me a little bit of a hard time at the back right behind us here. So fortunately though, we were able to get the green objective. I mean, I'm still getting used to the handling model. I wasn't able to get purple on this, but we managed to get the some resource points out of that, which was fantastic. We then moved on into one of the new practice programs that is available to do, and that is the fuel consumption practice program. Basically what you have to do is to try and save fuel over the lap whilst you're trying to beat a target time. Unfortunately, we had a little bit of trouble with another Williams. This time it was Massa that overtook us on that 3rd lap, but as you can see, we were able to get the greens on the first 2 laps, and then we were able to get green on this last lap as well, which was really good, and we managed to get a good number of resource points out of this as well, which was fantastic. But that was the end of practice 1. We're going to go and do the other 2 practice sessions in a bit. There's a cutscene though we need to watch.
You got my message. Perfect. Welcome to home away from home. We get more real-time data from the factory now than ever before, and it all comes through here. So I have to spend more time checking over the reports and less time hunting you down in the hospitality suite. To that end... Sorry, just a sec. Yeah, Chris, is this important? I'm in the middle of something. Okay. Right. Well, that makes no sense. Have Sarah reset the simulation and run it again. Okay. Sorry about that. As I was saying, we've set up a desk for you at the front here. You can get onto the network from your laptop, so make sure to check the R&D screen regularly. And let us know how you want to use the data that we've collected over the weekend and through the practice programs. Also, bear in mind that the news from the factory won't always be good. Sometimes tests fail, like you've seen just now. And when that happens, we have to divert additional resources to fix it. C'est la vie, I'm afraid.
Alright, thank you very much, Chris. He was the design guy in F1 2016 as well, and this is the introduction to the resource points and car development part of the career mode. And what can I say? It's a massive enhancement to what we had in F1 2016 in terms of upgrades, and also how deep it goes into with regards to the upgrades, and the fact that there's the added element of parts possibly failing. But there are upgrades that you can get on this in the tech tree, which we'll show you in a minute, that will reduce the likelihood of parts being failing. So if we cut away to the tech tree, this is the development page, and it's split into 4 main components. So durability, which is related to how reliable your car is, chassis, aerodynamics, and powertrain. So powertrain is essentially the engine. Durability is things like reducing engine wear and gearbox wear. So as you can see, it looks like a little bit of an umbrella. So there's one upgrade there you can take. There's also chassis. As you can see, it actually shows you a comparison as to how far, where you are relative to that particular area of the car development. As you can see, we are currently last in that, so that might be something that we're going to look to develop in the near future. I'm just cycling through the top and bottom things, which are the either reducing the cost of the upgrades or reducing the increasing the chance of the parts actually being successful. But this area, the chassis, is probably our weakest area. Powertrain, we aren't bottom, but we are second last, and the deficit between ourselves and Renault isn't, the Renault powered teams isn't as great as you can see from McLaren's perspective. So I don't think we need to work on this too much. It's primarily the aerodynamics we need to work on, but it'll be nice to work on a couple of bits in the powertrain to such that we can not have to worry about being overtaken on the straights by the Renault powered cars. But we'll have to wait and see on that front. So that may be something we explore in the near future. And then finally, we've also got aerodynamics. Now, we are bottom of this category as well, but the gap between ourselves and the rest of the field isn't that big, so we're not too far away from Haas, and surprisingly, Force India are quite low down there. So a possibility to upgrade one of these parts is definitely on the table. But what I decided to do, I decided to initially get the first durability upgrade, just so it reduces the wear on all the parts by, I think, 10%, I think it says on the thing, from what I remember. But yeah, in order for us to get all the other upgrades related to that, you need to get this initial upgrade. And as you can see, we have done that, and that will come in to the next race in China. The other thing we also decided to upgrade is also the chassis part side of things. So I decided to purchase one upgrade on the side bit where it reduces the cost of the overall the cost of the number of resource points required to upgrade a piece of the chassis, and we decided to get the first upgrade on the chassis as well after much deliberation to try and reduce that gap between ourselves and Williams and Haas, which would be quite nice. Yeah, so we decided to pick this, and that's the last upgrade we were able to do at that stage before we then cut into second practice, where we decided to complete the last two practice program sessions that are available. So we started off with the qualifying pace program, which was in F1 2016. So the aim of this is to try and set as fast a lap time as possible, trying to beat a target time on the softest compound of tyre and rich fuel mixture. So basically, essentially simulating a qualifying run. And as you can see, we're heading across the line right about now, and we actually managed to get the purple lap time, which means we managed to beat the team's secondary objective and get the maximum number of resource points there. I made a setup change. That's the reason why I was able to extract a little bit more time out of that. And then we moved on into the final practice program, which is the race strategy. So the aim of this is to try and run basically a race simulation, but it's a shortened version because as you can see, it's only 5 laps of it. Basically, what I decided to do was to try and I met the board secondary objectives already, but I decided to run the extra 2 laps just to give us a little bit more data and pass that on ready for the race.
Hey, looks like you've got a bit of rivalry going on out there. This is good. Gets people talking about you. Just make sure you outperform them, okay?
Alright, thank you very much, Emma, and as you can see, this is the start of the driver rivalry part of it. Because it's the first race and the start of the career mode, it is going to be our teammate Pascal Wehrlein, and we're also going to get our qualifying objectives from her as she's just walking up the stairs and not actually on the phone, so I guess it is a voicemail that she's left. And as you can see, we are expected to qualify 19th, so not last, and beat our teammate Pascal Wehrlein. So I think that's kind of being a bit harsh on Wehrlein, assuming that he's going to be finished starting last, but we'll have to wait and see. Let's see what this Sauber can do in qualifying.
Welcome to Melbourne, where qualifying for the Australian Grand Prix should be getting underway shortly. Looking at this field today, Ant, do you think we're going to see anyone take a chance, maybe run the harder of the available compounds and save some of the grippy tyres for the race tomorrow?
Well, I'd be surprised in all honesty. It's only the front runners that really have the pace to get away with that, and even then, at the end of the day, it's a big risk. Track position is the most important thing, and it's rarely worth sacrificing for a slightly more optimal strategy in the race, so I doubt we're going to see anyone trying it. I have been wrong before though. We certainly do see some risky decisions every now and then, and it's a gamble that's sometimes worth taking. But if it were me in the car, I would want to be on the fastest tyre for my qualifying lap, without a doubt.
Alright, here we are, ready to start our first run in qualifying one. We're not expected to do much, as you saw earlier, for the qualifying objectives, but unfortunately our first qualifying run was hampered by Felipe Massa exiting the pits right in front of us as we began our lap, and that from that point on our first lap was kind of ruined, which was very, very frustrating. And you know what, just to spite him, I actually decided to stay in front of him whilst I was trying to complete that lap. So yeah, we then moved on into our second run. As you can see, we're currently sitting in 19th. We then moved up into 18th ahead of Van Dorn, but then Wehrlein improved his lap time. And then our final run was kind of hampered by Magnussen towards the end of the final sector, at the end of lap number 3. So this was our final run and final shots at it. Wehrlein made an improvement. We then go ahead of Wehrlein in our final run, but unfortunately then Van Dorn found some ridiculous amount of time and got in front of us, which meant that the Saubers are going to be qualifying on row 10, on the back row of the grid. But at least we did out-qualify ahead of Wehrlein. But I didn't expect us to be 8/10 off the pace of the McLarens. That was really, really surprising, considering what happened in real life. The fact that I think, yeah, I'm sure the gap wasn't that big between the two teams, but we're just going to have to prove that our engine is a lot better than theirs in the race. So, yeah, disappointing, but we did meet the required objective, which was fantastic. And also, because we managed to get a few more resource points from the practice session and also from this qualifying, we then decided to make another upgrade, but that was mainly on the not to improve the car, but to improve the overall performance of how the upgrades are handled. So we basically got the upgrade to reduce the likelihood of the parts failing, or the first upgrade of that, and hopefully that means that our upgrade for that's expected to come in Bahrain will not fail. So without further ado, let's now get on into the race.
Anthony Davidson, great to have you with us once again. This is a big moment for the sport. Big changes to the technical regulations. The potential, perhaps, to give us the biggest shake-up since 2014. Very different cars visually, and, fingers crossed, much faster as well.
Good thing then that combined these teams put in just a shade over 13,000 kilometres on the clock during testing. The cornering speed of these new machines is absolutely unbelievable. How many lap records are still held by Michael Schumacher from 2004? Well, on the right day, on the right tyres, we might just be threatening them this year. Wider tyres, wider cars, more downforce. I have to say they look great, and the qualifying spectacle is undebatable. Now the big question remains, can they follow? Can they race? Or have these new rules gone too far?
With that then, let's run through the grid order. Sebastian Vettel will start on pole. Fantastic qualifying from the multiple world champion. And Kimi Räikkönen completes the front row. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Bottas, Hamilton, Max Verstappen, and Ricciardo, Massa, Stroll, Ocon, and Roman Grosjean. Sainz, Hülkenberg, Sergio Perez, and Palmer, Kvyat, Alonso, Stoffel Van Dorn, and Kevin Magnussen. A Sauber and Pascal Wehrlein completes the grid. And now it's time to head down to the track.
Keep your eyes open on the run to turn 1 and keep it clean. We want to come out in one piece. Good luck.
Thank you, Jeff. Here we are on the grid for our first race. Let's have a quick look at our first race strategy of the season. And we're going to go for a one-stopper, starting on the super soft tyres and then switching to the soft tyres. As you can see, we're going a little small introduction to this race strategy, but we know how it works. Yep, we're going to be going on to the soft tyres on lap number 13, and that should be comfortable enough for us to get to the end of the race. The one thing I did notice is that we've actually been under-fueled a little bit, so we're going to have to do a little bit of fuel saving during the race. So possibly, if a safety car does come out, that will help us out considerably with regards to that. But yeah, hopefully that's going to allow us to be a little bit quicker once we get the fuel saving out the way. As we're now going to go on to the formation lap, I noticed something that Magnussen is running the soft tyre, so he's going to be one of those guys we're going to probably try and overtake, because he's going to be fast towards. I think we could be able to match Magnussen's lap times with regards to the tyre compound difference. But Wehrlein is also on super soft, and I think the two McLarens are also on super soft, so they're on similar strategies to us. As we come towards the end of the formation lap, let's see what sort of start we can get from the back row of the grid, and let's get on with the Australian Grand Prix. lights out, and away we go, and it's a pretty okay-ish start, but Airline has got the jump on us onto for turn 1, and we've been forced down to the left-hand side of the track, which is not where I want to be when making up positions. Very nearly running into the back of, I think, Van Dorn there, but we are now we're still in last place here, and Airline's forcing us down to the left-hand side. But so what I decided to do is slightly brake, then cut to the inside line for turn 3, make a little dive bomb across down the inside of several cars, very nearly getting it on down the inside of Alonso. We were unable to do so, but we've managed to jump both Magnussen, Van Dorn, and also our teammate Verline. So we're up into 17th place. So at the moment, we're currently sitting in a good position with regards to our team objectives. So we tried to stick with Alonso, who was trying to hold on to the back of a couple of midfield cars, but a mistake, unfortunately, into the exit of this corner, onto the grass a little bit, and Magnussen is now right on us as we head up towards turn 11 or turn 12, one of the two corners, but the right-hander here, but we were able to fend the Dane off here in the first lap, and it's probably going to be a little bit of a battle between ourselves and the cars behind, because Alonso begins to stretch his advantage over us, along with the midfield, so we're only really battling the likes of Magnussen, Van Dorn, and my teammates. And make a little bit of mistake, but there's a yellow flag behind us, so there's something wrong with one of the cars. It's actually Magnussen, so one of the major threats to us is actually out of the race already. And I was really surprised that the safety car wasn't thrown, considering the location of where his car was. But as you can see, smoke is pouring out of the Haas from Verline's perspective here, and that the Dane becomes the first retirement of the campaign. And that takes a little bit of pressure off us, but we can't get too complacent. We've got Van Dorn and our teammate just behind us. Alonso is too far ahead of us. Although, having said that,
Some information on Alonso. They have an issue with their car. They're going to be slow.
oh, that is music to my ears, hearing that Alonso has a mechanical issue. I'm sure Alonso is using a lot of explicits in his radio communication, considering he has a history of that in this season in real life. So we begin to close the gap on Alonso as we now cut to the end of lap 6. We've got a couple of cars that are starting to make their early pit stop. I think these are the guys that are on two-stop strategies, so we'll be racing them, and technically as it stands, we make a little bit of mistake into turn 1, but Van Dorn is a bit too far away to challenge us. There's a couple more cars that are coming into the pits at the end of lap number 7, but the one thing I'm kind of getting concerned about, yes, I'm gaining time on Alonso, but Van Dorn is staying with me, which is a little bit uncomfortable. Although, having said that, the Honda curse does strike again, as you can see. We can see Alonso in the distance. We've got another yellow flag, and that is actually Van Dorn that's pulling off to retire from the race. So that's two McLaren Honda engine related issues in one race. That's pretty much realistic already. As we now come to, as we then start at the end of lap 9, then hit the bollard during this end of the second sector of lap number 9, and we've got Felipe Massa right behind us, who's already had his first pit stop, and he's trying to make a move round the outside of us into turn 11, but we're not having any of it, and we're preventing the Brazilian who used to drive for Sauber all way back in the day, back in 2002, 2004, and also in 2005. But he's going to use his super powerful Williams Mercedes engine to go up the inside of us into turn 1. We try and hold it round the outside, but he's got the fresher tyres, is able to hold it round the outside, and is taking the position from us. A really good move there from the AI. I really quite like that. It's then cut on to lap 11. As you can see, we're visibly closer to Fernando Alonso. And as you can see, Verline is also trying to join the party. He's got a couple of cars in front of us. But unfortunately, I make an ambitious braking maneuver on Alonso and completely mess it up. Understeer wide into the gravel. Alonso takes advantage, but also Verline gets around the outside of me. And I've lost the position to my teammate, and now I'm the one under pressure from all the fast cars. And I think that's Lance Stroll and also Esteban Ocon, and I think also Romain Grosjean in that list. I try to get back on terms with Verline, but unfortunately unable to do so. I'm now under pressure from Stroll. But Verline's now already overtaken Alonso. That only took him a couple of corners to pass the McLaren Honda, or the sick McLaren Honda. And now we're really onto the back of Alonso. We're going to go up the inside into turn 11 to take P13 away from the Spaniard. He tries to hold it around the outside, but gets onto the gravel a little bit. And then he's going to compromise him from Stroll behind, who's now made the move on the Spaniard, and he is now up into another position. The rookie making up another position from his end as well, hoping the Canadian's having a good race, considering that it's his debut race, and he's the first Canadian since Jacques Villeneuve to race in the sport. As Stroll now looks to overtake us into turn 1 in the same way his teammate used to do, or same teammate did a couple of laps ago, but this time we were able to hold it round the outside and prevent the overtake from happening. Stroll then again tries to overtake us a bit later on in the lap, but we're able to hold it around the outside, get a little bit tagged by Stroll, get a warning for exceeding track limits, but to be honest, that was quite harsh considering we had made contact with the Williams, so I'm surprised Comas didn't pick up the fact that we were hit by Stroll. Stroll then attempts to go up the inside at the start of lap 13, but again, we hold around the outside, but we make a mistake though this time. We just about save it though and somehow keep the position. I'm really surprised how the AI weren't able to swerve around my car and take the position. The Stroll tries to go around the outside into turn 3. This is actually our pit stop lap, so we're doing alright actually to keep these cars behind as our tyres are beginning to fade. Heading into the pits now for lap 13, trying to hit our pit board markers as neatly as possible. We have done so. Make sure we don't get a penalty. I think also Alonso is in behind us. Yes, he is. So this battle, it's not really a battle of the pit crews. We're a bit too far ahead. Let's see what sort of time the Sauber pit crew do. We're at the bottom in terms of that stat, but it's an okay-ish pit stop, and we're going to come out in 17th, and we're going to release the pit release monitor button, as that's actually a new feature in the game. You actually have to turn off the pit release button as you exit the pits. We come into turn 1. We actually get a achievement. I think it's for the releasing the pit limiter as we exit the pits. We're now going to cut to 1 lap later as Verlaine actually made his pit stop the following lap, and I'm very curious to see what sort of gap he has now after we came into the pits 1 lap earlier.
It is 2.7 seconds.
Thank you very much, Jeff. We're only 2.7 seconds behind. I think we gained a little bit of time due to the fact that we had a 1 lap undercut on our teammate, but as the laps progress, we begin to close down on Pascal Verlaine to try and get back the position. But we also have a retirement for Esteban Ocon, and that resulted in a virtual safety car being deployed. I was initially thinking that it was going to be a safety car, but I didn't listen to the engineer, and then the VSC symbol then popped up. So now we've got a part of the race where it's stagnated, where we're just trying to manage the tyres, going to lean fuel mixture now, such that we can we've managed to finally get the fuel saving under control, and we now have enough fuel to actually run in standard, or possibly even use rich fuel mix for a little bit of time in the race. So that's perfect for us. We now end the virtual safety car at the in the middle of lap number 18. As we now cut onto the end of lap 18, I've got a car in the pits, and that's Carlos Sainz. So that's one position we've gained, but I very much doubt we're going to keep hold of that position because Sainz is on the softer compound tyre, and they are fresher tyres as well. So yep, it's one of those things we're going to have to deal with. We're now on to lap 20. We're visibly closer to Verlaine. Possibly may have an opportunity to make a move on him into the final corner, but unfortunately, I completely mess up the final corner entry, and that allows Verlaine to get away, and Sainz now has an opportunity to overtake us. We're going to force him to go the long way round the outside, though, and as we break in towards turn 1, we're able to fend off the Toro Rosso there as a car comes out the pits in front of Verlaine. I think that's Romain Grosjean, but Verlaine wasn't able to get in front of him, unfortunately. We now cut on to lap 21. We're actually getting lapped by the race leader, and that is Kimi Räikkönen. Unfortunately, I didn't really want to let him through reluctantly because of the fact that Sainz was also just behind us. I didn't want him to steal a position there. We tried to stick with the Ferrari through the turn 9 and 10 complex, but we completely missed the apex, get onto the grass, and Sainz has the position on a silver platter there. Really, really frustrating that I've made that mistake. But that's mistake number 2 I've made in this race, to lose a position. But we didn't let that affect us too much. We're now onto the back of Verlaine on lap 22. But again, we couldn't seem to get the right exit out of the last 2 corners, and Verlaine has enough of a gap ahead of us to maintain his position. The other thing that's concerning me is that Alonso has actually got his engine fixed. He's now starting to close the gap on us, which is a little bit uncomfortable. I don't really want to be finishing last in this race. We're now on to the end of lap 24, making a little bit of a contact with our teammate there, but we wanted to try and get as close as we possibly can onto the start-finish straight, so that we have an opportunity to make a move into turn 1 or possibly turn 3. We have got the DRS wide open here, and we have a massive opportunity to take the position into turn 1. Braking a little bit later than Verlaine. He closes the door, but then eventually opens it as he notices we were coming, and we're now up the inside of Verlaine into P15, getting that position back away from our teammate. And then we cut onto lap 26. I was having a quick look at the engine management stuff, and as you can see, it's reasonable, I guess, but there's just a couple of parts which are above close to 20%, which is a little bit concerning, considering the fact that on average they've got to last, if I do the maths right, they've got to be 20% per race, but in fact even less than that. But anyways, we're now on to lap 27. We've got more blue flags to deal with, and unfortunately Verlaine gets absolutely screwed over by Vettel making a move there, and that results in Alonso overtaking him, and he's now last. And as we now got to let Vettel get in front of us, right there, I put letting go in a suitable spot, and I was looking behind so many times because then Hamilton was right behind us. We come in towards the turn 9, turn 10 complex. I didn't want to let him through here, so I'm going to let him through at the exit of the corner because I didn't really want to lose too much time to Alonso and Wehrlein there, or give Hamilton. Yes, Hamilton loses a little bit of time to us to Vettel in front, but it's the least possible hold up for both drivers in my opinion. But anyways, we're now on to lap 28, which is actually our final lap because we were a lap down. Alonso's managed to close the gap right on top onto us, but his McLaren on an engine isn't quick enough, and we're able to hold the position. As we now cut towards the end of the final lap, Raikkonen has actually won the race. We're coming through the last 2 turns. Alonso is right there, but he just doesn't have the horsepower to challenge us here. As we're going to come onto the start-finish straight and come across the line in 15th place. Decent start, I guess, to the season.
Okay, pick up rubber and bring it home.
Great effort there from Ferrari to take the victory today. So, Ant, how exactly did they set themselves apart from the pack today?
It was a question of right place, right time today. We were looking at an entirely different race before the safety car came out, but they were able to take full advantage after the field had been bunched up.
And as we can see, it's time for the podium, and as the drivers make their way out, there's a familiar red suit making its way to the top step. Fantastic win for Ferrari. And after this round of the World Championship, here's how things look in the Drivers' Table. Kimi Raikkonen takes over the lead of the Drivers' Championship after that excellent result. And now I'd like to ask you, Anthony Davidson, who was your driver of the day?
Let's give it to Sergio Perez. That was a commanding performance today. Very impressive indeed.
And here's how things are shaping up in the Constructors' Championship. Ferrari moved to the top of the table. After all that excitement, it's time for a lie down, I think. Thanks for joining us, and goodbye until the next race.
So confirmation for the results of the Grand Prix. Kimi Raikkonen wins the race with Vettel, his teammate, in second. So Ferrari 1-2 right there. Hamilton in third. A split strategy actually for the 2 Ferraris. One on a 1-stop, one on a 2-stop. Hamilton finishing third on a 2-stop with the 2 Red Bulls on a 1-stop in 4th and 5th. Bottas in 6th. A bit of a disappointing debut for him in the Mercedes. Perez having a good race in 7th. Massa in 8th. Hulkenberg in 9th. And Jolyon Palmer somehow getting a point in 10th. Who'd have thought it? Jolyon Palmer in the points in the first race of the season. Yeah, that's a bit harsh, but come on. Now, Jolyon Palmer has got the nicknames for good reason. But I'm happy for him, actually, to get a point on the board already at this very early stage of the season. Lance Stroll finishing in 13th. He's the other rookie that's out there today. Van Dorn finishing, obviously not finishing. But out of the 2 rookies, Stroll was able to beat us on the day, but that's mainly because he's got a faster car. And Wehrlein rounded off the cars that actually finished the race. So if we cut to the standings in the Drivers' Championship, nothing changes because of the fact that it's the opening race. So Raikkonen's leading ahead of Vettel and Hamilton. A bit unrealistic that Raikkonen's won the race, but I'd like to see a little bit of change, at least. I'm hoping that we don't have the similar sort of thing that we've got in other career modes where Raikkonen's dominating championship. But as you can see, Ferrari at the top with Mercedes in second, Red Bull third, Force India in 4th, and Williams and Renault the last 2 teams to get points on the board. Bit disappointed that we're not ahead of McLaren because of the fact that we finished ahead of them on countback, so at the moment. So I guess it's just taking into account the fact that we are the last season's Constructor Championship positions because of the fact that McLaren are still ahead of the likes of Toro Rosso and Haas, yet Toro Rosso and Haas drivers actually finished ahead of McLaren on today's race. So a bit disappointing there, but if it will all be okay if we can outscore them. So that's the aim actually for this particular season, is to somehow try and beat McLaren. I know they've got more resources than us, but I'm confident that we've got the strategies and strategy mindset, and also the team that will be able to get the good results. You never know, we might get a little bit of luck, as you saw in the season. Wehrlein's managed to score twice so far for Sauber. Yes, McLaren are currently still ahead of them, but the fact they've scored points is actually quite an achievement for Sauber. As you can see, we managed to increase our lead in the little rivalry update that we've got. So that's a good, promising start for us so far in this career mode. We also get a good approval rating from our team, which is fantastic. And also, McLaren looking quite interested in us, as mainly because of the fact, I think, because we beat them. But yeah, that's going to be the end, nearly the end of the episode. We've got one more cutscene to show you before I call it an episode.
Is this the one?
Indeed it is. And this is Jonathan. He's going to let you drive some of his cars.
Well, not quite my cars, per se. It's a mere detail. You know, I'd really rather be down there racing them myself, to be honest. I'm actually quite handy behind the wheel, but it's the downforce, those lateral Gs, you know? The old neck can't really handle it. So I need a pro. That's where you come in. We run in a bunch of events throughout the year. Time trials, races, all sorts. And I have it on good authority that you have the ability and temperament to do well in these. Make our business look good and, most importantly, bring the cars back in one piece. So consider this a formal invitation. I'll see you at the track.
Alright, so that is the start of the classic car content of the career mode. We've got opportunity to drive some classic cars throughout the season. I'm not going to show it in this episode, but if you guys want to see it, I will upload that part at the start of the second episode in China when we get to the second race. But in the end, I do decide to go for the Williams one. But if you want to see that, let me know in the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Hopefully the episodes will be a little bit shorter in the future. And I'll see you for the next episode, which will be in China. So until then, see you later.